Good morning, Wabash. Welcome to our special Tuesday Chapel Talk. Speaking in chapel today is Professor Ann Taylor. Introducing Professor Taylor will be Student Body President and my good friend, Andrew Powell. They will speak in succession and without interruption. Please welcome Andrew Powell.
Good morning, Wabash. Good morning. What does it mean to be a Wabash man or a Wabash woman? To be honest, I spent a lot of time thinking over the last 18 hours, and I'm not sure that I can give a satisfactory answer. But what I do know is that how we are being labeled right now, due to shirts seen at the game and on social media, it's not the Wabash that we as a community know. And it's not the Wabash that we are going to accept moving forward. I first want to acknowledge that in this chapel, this is by no means the end of the discussion that we should have on this matter. And I also want to provide a little encouragement before turning it over to Dr. Taylor, who is infinitely more qualified than I as it relates to these matters. To say we could have this chapel and then forget about the matters at hand would very much make me a hypocrite. Unfortunately, in life, and especially at Wabash, when one or several members of an organization mess up, we are all seen to have messed up. We know this, but we also can't lose sight of the fact that we've all made mistakes throughout our times at Wabash. There is no manual to guide us step by step through situations like this one. Nevertheless, frankly, I think that's what makes Wabash special, and the surrounding, learning, and living community special. We have the opportunity to teach, coach, empower, and most importantly, lead each other towards creating a Wabash that we all can love. And isn't that what a liberal arts education is all about? This liberal arts education forces us to grow each day by a mission that drives us to think, act, lead, and live better, and by a rule that expects us to be gentlemen both on and off the campus. As such, I want to share some encouragement through a prayer that I read every morning. This is the beginning of a new day. God has given me this day to use as I will. I can waste it, or I can use it for good. But what I do today is very important because I'm exchanging a day of my life for it. When tomorrow comes, this day will be gone forever, leaving something in its place that I have traded for it. I want it to be gain, not loss. Good, not evil. Success, not failure, in order that I shall not forget the price that I paid for it. And so, my Wabash brothers and sisters, I implore you not to forget that price, and that following Dr. Taylor's chapel talk at our lunch tables, we can have productive discourse about how to make both today and tomorrow that much better. Dr. Taylor is the first Haynes Professor of Biochemistry and the Senior Division Chair here at Wabash College. She received her Bachelor in Arts from Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota, before completing her PhD in chemistry at Purdue University and beginning teaching at Wabash in 1998. Since that time, Dr. Taylor has been a leader both on the classroom through publishing over 20 papers in biochemistry, as well as in the community as she was selected by President Hess to participate on the Ad Hoc Committee on Philanthropy. Here to give her talk titled, What Wabash Lost at the Bell Game and Why Wabash Always Fights, Dr. Ann Taylor.
Good morning, Wabash. Good morning, Thank you, Andrew, for the introduction, and to all of you for coming. You know you're getting old when you start a chapel talk by saying, I'm old enough to remember. Well, I'm old enough to remember a couple of terrific bell games. In 2001, Wabash came from behind on a miracle Hail Mary pass from Jake Knott to Ryan Short, who tipped it to Kurt Casper, who hauled it in with no time left on the clock. That moment lives on. The adrenaline rush has no comparison. In 2009, quarterback Mads Hudson had suffered a collapsed lung earlier in the season. In the Bell game, he converted a key 4th down deep in Wabash's own territory, holding off the Tigers. Both games were instant classics, the kind of games that will be talked about at big bashes to come. If you've been here for more than one Bell game, you probably have your favorite. This year's game, not so much. And that probably doesn't surprise most of you. While there were great plays and great sportsmanship, who wants to remember a loss? But today I challenge you to think hard about loss. Sometimes losses can be important learning opportunities, especially if you reflect on what exactly happened and what can be done to win in the future. Watching the film, as it were, and analyzing how the play was set up, how it was executed, and what the consequences were are all important ways to deconstruct and to learn from the event. But today, I don't want to talk to you about football. If you want to talk about the game, you'll need to talk to someone who knows a lot more about football than I do. Instead, I want to talk about another loss that was incurred on Saturday, not on the field, but on the sideline. Huh? How can Wabash lose on the sideline? Well, let's start with a recap of my day and look for Wabash wins and losses. The morning started well with helping my son Henry and his Boy Scout troop raise money for the local food pantry by parking cars. Wabash wins, supporting the community. It was fun to see parents, alumni, and even Danny's tailgating and having fun. I got to meet Anthony Douglas's father. Wabash wins, connecting people to each other. I heard the new pep band is pretty awesome. Wabash wins. Unfortunately, I wasn't there for the game. I took Henry to a Boy Scout Merit Badge College event to teach some scouts about nuclear science and to do some reconnaissance for an outreach activity I'd like to organize at Wabash. Wabash wins. I checked Facebook to see what the score was, and instead of Joe Trebley's play-by-play, I saw a post about a shirt that depicts Donald Trump in a Sphinx Club stripes carrying an upside-down DePaw tiger and says, "Grab him by the pussy." Wabash loses. Wait, why are you calling a t-shirt a loss? How can Wabash lose via a t-shirt? Honestly, you could have lots of different reactions to a shirt. You might say, that is actually kind of clever. DePaw's mascot is a tiger, so calling them a pussycat is just taming them. Or maybe, if the president-elect says it, it must be an okay phrase. How about, I didn't even see the shirt. How can it reflect on me and my college? Perhaps your response is utter outrage. How could anyone think that is okay? Or maybe your response was, who cares, it's just a shirt. Or perhaps your response is, what about the DePaw shirt that showed Donald Trump and said, Wabash College, grabbing high school pussy since 1832? Why aren't you talking to them? What I hope we can do in this time is to review some more film and put the t-shirt into context and see why it matters to us as a community and what we can do about it. I'd like to rewind the film just a little farther to the Worcester football game just a couple weeks ago. Bob Grand, class of '78, introduced his Wabash community to the Republican gubernatorial candidate. Jeremy Bird, class of '00, and co-founder of a consulting firm that was involved in Barack Obama's campaigns, was also here, as was Greg Estelle, class of '85, a staunch libertarian. This sounds like the beginning of a joke. A Republican, a Democrat, and a Libertarian walk into a bar. What's the punchline? In the case of these Wabash alums, the punchline is they have a few drinks, cheer for their favorite team, tell stories about their families, and enjoy each other's company. They challenge each other's arguments while making sure that everyone is heard and understood. They make plans for how to help Wabash thrive until its bicentennial, then go their separate ways with a pledge to meet again next year. That can't be said for many other meetings of people with strongly held and differing political beliefs. Most of the time, alumni from a college or university, especially a small, close-knit one like Wabash, have very similar views. So how has Wabash dodged this groupthink? Well, let me rewind the tape a lot further, to 1998. How many of you were born in 1998? Yeah, a bunch of the freshmen, right? Uh-huh. Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm definitely old. But in 1998, I was young. It was my first year at Wabash, straight out of grad school. Like many students and faculty members, I accepted the job at Wabash not because it was all male, but because it was a strong liberal arts college. I was one of 2 women in Division I. The other was a visiting instructor in biology. In contrast, there were 5 Davids in the division. Davids Croney, Meharry, Phillips, Polly, and Wilson. And my office was previously occupied by, you guessed it, David Stiard. But despite being in a very distinct minority, I quickly discovered that Wabash was a place that valued all of its members. Senior faculty members listened to me and respected my opinions and actively sought them out. And in doing so, modeled to students that what I had to contribute was important. I was given appointments not because of my gender, but because of my interest and abilities. My ideas might not always be right or the best one, but they would be heard and held to the same standard as everyone else's. This is what makes Wabash a place where a Republican, a Democrat, and a Libertarian can not just coexist, but thrive, where deep conversations and spirited debates can happen. Because at the end of the day, Wabash is an egalitarian place. We value everyone's voice and everyone's opinion. We debate issues based on the merits of the argument, not on how long you've been here, your gender, the color of your skin, your family income, or any other personal descriptor. At Wabash, we value you. We work to hear everyone's voice and opinion. We don't always succeed, and we don't always agree, but we aspire to it. Nice memory, Dr. Taylor, but what in the world does this story have to do with the t-shirt in question? Well, it's time for a little polling of the audience. How many of you have had to fight perceptions that because Wabash has only male students, you might be prejudiced against women? Yeah. This is the first way that this t-shirt is a loss. It feeds people's preconceived notions of what it means to be a college for men. Confirmation bias is a very real thing. People look for evidence that confirms what they think is already true. And it acts as a feed-forward cycle, reinforcing those thoughts. If Wabash wants to be respected as an institution of higher learning, we can't feed people's preconceived notions of misogyny. You might want to deny that and say that a few shouldn't represent the whole, but that's not how confirmation bias works. Here's a quote from a longer Facebook post from a Crawfordsville citizen about the t-shirt. I saw photos of that shirt the Wabash students were wearing at the football game Saturday that joked about the sexual assault our president-elect bragged about as a 59-year-old man. And now I'm afraid of Wabash students because some group of them got together, decided on this design, paid to have them printed, and wore them proudly. Ouch. For the second failing grade this t-shirt earns, we're going to take a trip in the Wayback Machine. The scene is a small K-12 school in rural Minnesota in the mid-1980s. There's lots of big hair. It's the middle of winter, and the teachers go outside during their lunch break to start their cars so the oil doesn't freeze and crack their engine blocks. True story. You see a freshman girl with an armful of books and no coat emerge from the front door, run around the building, and enter at a door farther back. What just happened? What kind of idiot runs around the outside of a school building on a bitterly cold day? Me. That's who. You might wonder, why would I run around the outside of the building instead of using the hallways? Interesting question. None of my teachers asked. Well, between my classes and my locker was the locker of a senior. He would wait for me, then walk behind me and grab my butt and feel my crotch. The first time it was shocking. I didn't know what to do. I don't think I ever knew what to do. So my answer was to avoid going past his locker. Some days it was too cold or I couldn't avoid it. Or I'd think maybe he'd lost interest and moved on. But it continued until two things happened. I finally told him off, and he found someone who responded more favorably to his advances. As I reflect back, that experience caused more than goosebumps and some frostbite. The repeated violation made it hard for me to see my body as my own. I struggled with my developing body and tried to starve myself back into girlhood. I had a very difficult time standing up for myself and seeing my body as something that was mine, not something for the pleasure of others. I've never told this story to anyone. So why would I share this with an audience that is mostly 18 to 22-year-old young men? Because grabbing somebody's pussy is sexual assault. It's a violation of their body and their soul. 1 in 5 women is a victim of sexual assault, and the victims aren't just limited to women. And it isn't limited to the way back when or only teens. As I was preparing this speech, a faculty member revealed a very recent attack. It's not something to be joked about. Behind every joke is a kernel of truth about what someone believes. The kernel of truth behind this shirt is that women are objects for the pleasure of men. This is ungentlemanly and untrue. It doesn't matter who has joked about it, it is not acceptable. So the second loss in this story are the victims of sexual assault. This is not a trivial loss. Seeing such a shirt can trigger a cascade of memories and feelings and bring back things that have been suppressed, even from 30 years ago. The third loss in this story is one you might not think of. It is those wearing the shirts. While it may seem frivolous and fun to them, others will see these young men as potentially violent, uncaring men. Portraying sex so crassly reduces it to a physical transaction and a power statement. Sex is not about power. It's about love and connection. You probably already have your own moral convictions about sex and marriage, but I do believe that both men and women lose from the objectification of women and sex. The fourth loss is the community. Remember the story about the Republican, the Democrat, and the Libertarian in the bar? That conversation only happens if all 3 members are willing to participate. So let's revisit my high school situation. You might ask, why didn't I confront him earlier or turn him in? You might be tempted to blame me for not standing up to him. First, I want to be clear about this. It is never the victim's fault. But I should have stood up to him. So why didn't I? I pondered that for a long time, and here's what I've come up with. First, I didn't feel that I had power to say anything. He was a senior. I was a freshman. He had social power. I was a nerdy kid. I did not. Second, I didn't think saying anything would change anything. Why would I think that? Well, the principal had not responded to other issues of sexual harassment. The boy was part of a group of powerful seniors that gave teachers nicknames with double entendres and called that to their faces in the hallways. If the principal wouldn't protect the teachers, why would I expect him to protect a student? Third, I didn't want to jeopardize my parents. My dad was a farmer, and for those of you familiar with farming, while there's a lot of capital investment, there's very little cash flow. My family depended on my mom's teaching income to survive, and if I spoke up, maybe her position would be cut. So lack of power, lack of response, and concern about retaliation. All 3 of these contribute to loss of community, both in my story and here at Wabash. They silence voices that are crucial for a fully examined life, for a vibrant intellectual community. This is the biggest loss with this t-shirt, creating a culture that doesn't value all voices and what they bring to conversations. And this isn't limited to this particular t-shirt. You may feel it because of your sexual orientation, family status, financial situation, national heritage, or something else. If you're feeling unheard or that there won't be a response, or you have a concern about the long-term effects about this t-shirt or any other issue, I want you to hear this. Your voice is valuable. We need you to be part of the conversation. Please, let your concerns be heard. But maybe you're feeling like none of this applies to you. Maybe you're thinking this hour could be much better spent working on your homework or studying for a test or working out. If that's you, please notice that these responses were all related not just to the perpetrator, but my perception of the community around me. Contrast my high school with the story about my first year here at Wabash. Because I felt my voice was valued, I was willing to speak. Why else would I volunteer to give this talk? I wasn't even at the game. I didn't see the shirt. You might not be happy with what I'm saying, but I know and trust the student body to hear my story respectfully. I have role models in the faculty who have led the way in pursuing difficult conversations. And I also had the conviction in my own heart that I should say something. And when you feel that burning in your heart, I hope you have the courage and conviction to stand up and say what needs to be said. To be a light in a dark world, one that speaks truth and compassion, wisdom and courage. That applies to everybody. As I mentioned earlier, I missed the game because of the Boy Scout training. I spent part of it in a leader meeting. One of the points that was made that some of life's biggest lessons come from failing. Like it or not, this t-shirt is a place where we have failed. We have failed to live by the gentleman's rule. We have failed our mothers, our sisters, our friends, and our classmates. We have failed our faculty and staff. We have failed our alumni and our community, both on campus and off. We have failed to see the wrong and address it in the moment. But failure is only the end of the story if that's where you stop. One thing I know about Wabash is this: we don't give up. That you're here today means that you respect President Hess and his request for a chapel. That you listen to this talk means that you're willing to engage in this conversation, and that means you care. Wabash always fights, not just on the gridiron, but also with tough intellectual and community issues. While I've been here, every generation of Wabash men has had its own t-shirt failure to help it define what it means to be a Wabash gentleman and what it means to think critically, act responsibly, lead effectively, and live humanely. That is the challenge I want to leave you with. This shouldn't be the end of the conversation. Rather, it should be a prompt to a larger one. Look around you. Whose voices do you hear most loudly? Is it an echo chamber of the truths you already hold? Or are you challenging your preconceived notions and sharpening your thoughts by talking with those who are different from you? Are there voices around you that are shouted over or ignored? It doesn't take much to empower them. Listen and tell others to do the same. Are you afraid to speak your mind? Be bold. We need you. Monochromatic pictures are not very interesting. We need everyone's contributions. It's hard to trust. It's risky. This is the second time in 2 years that I've stepped out and talked about hard, scary things. The risk is worth the reward, my friend. It'll deepen your connections and heal old wounds. It makes us stronger. While I started this talk with I remember whens, you may or may not remember this bell game. But I hope the lesson about community and the value of every voice will remain with you. And I hope to hear the ding, ding, ding ringing across campus next year, the bell joyfully answering yes to Did Wabash Win Today, both on the fields and in the stands. Thank you.